Hello, my name is Mahogany Morris. I'm a senior at Bard High School Early College, Manhattan, and I will be starting Spelman College in the fall. I'm so excited to be here for the second annual Black Girl Freedom Week and to have the honor to introduce Ms. Sanaa Lathan, the moderator for this panel, Black Girls as Storytellers and Culture Makers. Ms. Lathan is an actor, director, producer, and activist, and the star of one of my favorite films growing up, Love and Basketball, in which her character, Monica, normalizes and humanizes Black girl athletes. As an aspiring filmmaker myself, I understand and deeply appreciate the narratives that center the fullness of Black girls. Ms. Lathan, your feature directorial debut on the Come Up centers a 16-year-old Black girl. Why was it important for you to make this debut featuring a Black girl's story?
For having me. I am so happy to be here to talk about Black girls, which is, I feel like part of my purpose in life is to uplift us and just move the culture forward for us. On the Come Up, I was immediately taken by this story. It centers on Bree, a 16-year-old girl who has a very traumatic childhood, and she's kind of abandoned to kind of raise herself by herself from a number of factors. And she uses her poetry, which is, kind of manifested through battle rap, but she uses her poetry to kind of heal herself and to give her hope for a future. And I was so moved by the story. It takes place in a fictional world, a fictional hood called Garden Heights, but it could be, a hood in LA, it could be in New York, it could be in Chicago. Her story resonated with me because this is a story that is classic in the sense that not only do Black girls and Black boys, all little girls around the world, she could be any color. And her story was very resonant for me. I had a very different childhood, but I also had my own trauma. And part of my story is that my acting, my theater, and working on great plays and working on characters helped me heal myself. And it obviously has given me a path, a future. And so there's a lot of parallels in terms of my childhood with Bree's in that sense of art healing me. So I'm so excited and I can't wait to bring it to the world. So anyway, I would like to ask Jessica. So Jessica, you work with the Black Girls Film Group. Can you tell us what you do there and why it's crucial that Black girls specifically are given a space to tell their stories through film? That's amazing.
Able to produce. It was something that was just so personal to me and that I wanted to share with the world so that it gives other Black girls who look like me or come from a similar background, or even those who don't, a place to just connect on that type of level. So right now, I'm still in the family I call Black Girls Film Camp. I'm on the planning committee. I serve on the social media team. And I also love that because, like I said, Black Girls Film Camp is definitely something that has become a family, and I want to share that with the world. And I think that the best way to do that is through social media, because look at the world we're living in now. So I think that it's so important that we share that space and that we allow Black girls to just be them authentically, unapologetically. I don't think that we're given that as much as we should. So I'm so excited to be a part of Black Girls Film Camp, be a part of this panel. And
that sounds so amazing. How do people find Black Girls Film Camp? Because I'm sure there's a lot of people who are listening in who would love to kind of see about that for themselves.
Yeah, so Black Girls Film Camp, you can find us on IG at Black Girls Film Camp. You can find us on TikTok, our TikTok page, our founder, Miss Jamaica Anderson. I'm sure she's looking. She's definitely blown up our TikTok page. And you can find us there at Black Girls Film Camp as well. And then also on Facebook, it's kind of the same at Black Girls Film Camp, or you can go to blackgirlsfilmcamp.org.
That's
Yeah.
so good. I'm so excited for people to discover what you guys are doing there. And so Eva, I would like to ask you the same question as an emerging artist. I would love to get your perspective on what stories are important for you to tell.
The stories that matter the most to me are the stories that I didn't get to see growing up. You know, I didn't really see many representations of Black trans women. You know, I think oftentimes, uh, especially growing up, there's this notion that if you are queer, trans, that that's more of like a like white thing, and that's honestly never been the case. I mean, you can go all the way back to the 1800s. There is so much evidence of Black trans women during that time. A couple of years back, I got to be in a short film that kind of shed light on a lot of what was happening during that time, and really just showing more people who look like me, people who come from similar backgrounds. Those are the stories that matter most, whether I'm telling that in media, whether I'm telling that in film, my writing, whatever it is. Yeah.
I love that. It's so important to see yourself reflected, to self-esteem and self-worth, even confidence.
Absolutely.
And it's crazy that just now in the last couple of years are we starting to see an array of us reflected in different types of stories and not just stereotypes. It just fills me up because it's crazy that it's taken this long.
Yeah.
But it's important. And this work of being a storyteller is, I believe it's spiritual work. I believe that it is healing, and there's a lot of healing to be done. So kudos to you girls. So Brooklyn, as a journalist, what are the stories about Black girl that you feel are important to tell?
I feel like that answer is typically twofold. What are the stories that aren't getting international attention or even national attention? I like to zone in on those stories because I feel like people should be aware about what's happening as it pertains to Black girls and women. And then on the other side, I like to analyze what are those conversations that I'm having with my family members and my homegirls. You know, what are we talking about kind of casually amongst ourselves? We don't feel like it's serious enough to be, you know, put on the big screen in media. So I like to tell those kind of, you know, those kind of cheeky stories that we're having, those conversations that we're having. And it's very interesting to see the responses to those stories, because those are typically the ones that are like, oh my gosh, I was just saying this yesterday, or I've been feeling this way, but I didn't know how to articulate it. And that always really resonates for me because it lets me know that the work that I'm doing is valid and that Black girls always have a story to tell.
Yeah, it's so important to feel connected, to feel like you're not alone. It's crazy to me how the internet has weirdly made the world a smaller place, in that everybody is connected through these social media apps. And yet I feel like people are feeling more lonely than ever. And so the importance of sharing experiences and sharing stories and being vulnerable and sharing what you're going through, I think helps to, you know, remedy that a little bit. So I have some more questions, and this is for anybody. How do the less broadcasted, meaning the stories we tell one another and the stories we tell ourselves about ourselves, influence daily life?
I can answer. I think that the stories we tell ourselves about ourselves impact how we feel about ourselves and how we're able to communicate with one another. So if you're uplifting yourself in the affirmations that you're telling yourself in the morning, you know, it's a little bit easier to commune. And then on the other side, if you know you're beating yourself up all the time, or you're being really mean to yourself, it might be a little bit more difficult to connect, because your self-worth is in a place where it shouldn't be, and you start to believe that everyone views you in the way that you view yourself.
Exactly.
So I think we have to tell ourselves kind stories about ourselves, and be sure to lift up, you know, each other in the process.
One of the best lessons I've learned, and I believe in therapy, I believe that this world is too rough out there for us to just, you know, bear it alone. I believe that in getting help for, you know, therapy as kind of like how we have normalized going to the gym to work on our body, but just to constantly be working on our mental health. I think that's really important. And one of my best lessons that I learned really late, and I still struggle with sometimes, is that the way that we talk to ourselves is a form of self-care, and to actually think about the things that we say to ourselves, whether it be like, you know, you can't do that, or ugh, you look ugly, or look, you know, you're fat. Would you say that to somebody you loved? And what I found about myself and so many of my, you know, friends is that we really do talk to ourselves like we would never talk to somebody that we loved or cared about. And so it is an active practice to catch those thoughts and to catch what you're saying to yourself. And even if it feels silly in the moment, there is power in shifting that and being like, no, I'm going to care for myself. You can't care for yourself. How are you going to care for others? You got to care for yourself first. So yes, Brooklyn, that is so important. Okay, the next question is the idea of the griot, a community orator who ties in music and poetry into their stories, has roots in ancient Africa. Why do you believe the spokesperson had such a prominent, celebrated role throughout history, the griot? Does anybody want to answer?
I can start. I can.
Okay, Jessica.
Yeah, so I think that the reason that that type of speech orator had such a prominent impact in especially African culture is because a lot of times we were seen as speechless. We had no voice. So especially even in today's times, in films and in different forms of art mediums, when we're given the place to even romanticizing the way that we speak, and we're allowed to just express plainly how we're feeling, it gives a sense of power. I think that that's something that, especially and even in my own experience, that I've found power and strength within. Even growing up, I went to a predominantly white school. And a lot of times I would be the only one and the only Black person in the class, and it would make you feel silenced. So when you're able to see those things, even in our culture, and see those types of orators, excuse me, oh my gosh, and just having that sense of power and just being able to speak freely.
I love that. Does anybody else have anything to say?
Thinking of the griot, it made me think about there was this blog called the Trans Griot, started by a woman in Texas, Monica Roberts. She passed a couple of years back, but she was really one of the first people to really shed light on a lot of the violence that was happening to Black trans women across the country and just the world. And she really devoted her whole life to making sure that these stories that now we see almost every day, whether we're on social media or on the news, she was really one of the first architects of that kind of storytelling, doing such spiritual work and such vital work. And I know that when I first found that blog, when I was very, very young, I was able to understand a lot more about myself and yeah, that kind of storytelling harkens back eons. So.
Yes. And we continue to do it through music, through poetry, through theater, film, television, and we have a responsibility, to continue telling our stories. Next question is, we typically think of storytelling as restricted. Oh, this is so funny. I was psychic. We typically think of storytelling as restricted to the written word. What are some of the non-traditional ways we can weave cultural narratives? I would say through poetry, through song, through, rhyming, through tapestry, through painting, through how we do our hair, how we adorn, how we dress. And Black women are just the best at that, I think, too. Just always setting trends and remixing trends, when it comes to how we adorn ourselves.
Yes, I agree, definitely. I think our culture is just so vibrant. It's hard not to just express anything and everything, especially like I love how you mentioned our hair, makeup, things like that. I think that we're definitely rising to the occasion, especially now in today's times, sharing those types of things with the world. We have literally anything at our fingertips now. So I think that producing that type of art culturally and sharing that with the world is one of the best ways that we're doing that right now. I think we're definitely on the come up.
On the come up, no pun intended. That's right. Yeah, no, this is a beautiful time. There's so much more work to be done. And yet, it is a beautiful time culturally for us. Finally, I'm seeing, when I came up as an actress, unfortunately, there were like 5 Black actresses who were actually like working on a really regular level. And I knew them. I knew all of them. And now it's great. It's like I'm discovering new people every day. And I don't know, I don't know. And I love that I don't know everybody, because that means that there's so many people working, as well as behind the camera. Even when I was getting together with my crew for On the Come Up, it was very interesting. And it was frustrating on one hand, but also I was secretly happy because there were so many people that were out there and who were just booked for, crew members, actors. And so it definitely is a different time. And I've experienced it in real time in my lifetime. So that's kind of great. So yeah. Do we have time? Do you have time for any more questions? Do you guys have any more questions for me or?
Yeah, I had a couple that I wanted to ask, if it's okay.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, my first one was, when did you realize that you had the power to shift culture?
Wow, that's the power to shift culture. I love the way you say that. I had a mentor early on. I went to drama school and I did lots of plays and I started in the theater. So I always kind of had a real sense that acting was a real craft. But when I first came out of school, I had a mentor who's a fabulous actress herself named Michelle Shea. And she kind of introduced me to a kind of spiritual side of acting, in that the roles that we're playing not only can, entertain and, stimulate people, but it can inspire people and it can heal people. And not only heal the audience, but when you are the storyteller, you can heal yourself and you can heal aspects of your past. And so I don't know if that's the culture. I don't know if that's answering that question, but I realized the power of being a storyteller early on. And I've kind of tried to always remember that, because the business can be very hard. And this, like every business is hard. Life, nobody escapes the hard points in life. And so you got to always get back to what is your purpose and what is your passion. And if it has shifted the culture in any kind of ways, then great, you know. I don't know if that answers the question.
It definitely did. And then my second and last question, because I know Jessica had a question as well, was in Brown Sugar, which turns 20 this year, your role, the portrayal of Sydney Shaw just inspired tons of Black women and girls to write books and articles and essays. So did you know that that role would have that kind of intergenerational impact?
I had no idea. I had no idea. That was a role that the writer had kind of written with me in mind. It was great because I was kind of coming off Love and Basketball, and that in and of itself was an honor. And I talked to Black women. I talked to a Black woman named Kierna Mayo, who was, I don't know. Oh, you know her, good. She was, she was Sydney back then. And she really kind of walked me through the world. And we shot it right after 9/11 in New York City. And it was one of the first productions to be shot there. And it was a scary time for the world, but New York City was so happy to have us. And it was the first time that I had worked on something where I met so many of these people who would go on to become friends of mine, from Tay to, Boris and Nicole, Ari Parker, and Mos Def and Latifah. I mean, who knew that it would become something that people are still watching 20 years later? But that, that's kind of like the cherry on top when you look back and somebody comes up to you and says, oh, that, I watch that movie all the time. To me, that means that that movie is doing something for them. And that's, that's all you can ask.
Yeah, beautiful. One of my favorite movies.
Oh, I love that. Okay, so let's see. I think we should wrap up. This has been such a great conversation. I love this initiative, 1 billion for Black girls, and Black Girl Freedom Week, for me, in my mind, is Black Girl Freedom Lifetime. It's not just, 1 week or 1 month. And yet I am so grateful to everybody who put this together, so that we can uplift ourselves and our stories. And I just want to encourage you all to keep going, keep writing, keep telling your stories, and we'll just keep on moving up. Thank you so much.
So much.
All right, you guys have a great